Stay with me on this one. It's a little belter if you like stoves. Right then, I've got a variety of stoves to show you today. 3 different ways you can cook MREs. You can actually put your food into a pan and do it that way, or you can go down the road of dehydrated food where all you need is something to boil water. So we'll have a look at them one at a time. I've also bought with me the stove bags, so it should be something for everyone. So let's start off, I think, with the first on top of the pack. So for a boil up ration pack, which is either a square or rectangular pouch of food that needs to be boiled for several minutes, so I need a cylinder shaped container for that. I need a stove for it. This is the trusty old army jet boil. Now we've also done our own versions of ration packs that you can do in these, and you can see it is a cylindrical container, and within would be a stove and the gas for it and a stabilizer triangle. So you can have your food together pretty quick. Once it's come to a boil, you leave your MRE in here for about maybe 5 to 6 minutes on not a rolling boil, but between a rolling boil and a simmer, somewhere in between, a constant bubbling for a few minutes, and that will heat your food a treat. I like to find little bags like this to put the stove set in, and I've put a pack in to most of the stoves here. It's easier for me to pull out the whole stove set, keep everything together. Everything is more or less also on the shoulder sling, so you can hang it from a tree if you want. Let's have a look in here. Well, this is the butane rectangular mess tin. Lying on the top, on its width, I can just about fit a canister of butane. I'll get maybe 2 or 3 days out of that. Now I've decided to put the rest of this into a rectangular mess tin, so if you do want to do a fry up or something like that, you can decide to cook in this fashion. And this one, I've put the card stove in. Quite like this stove, and now I've found a setup and a bag that I like. And there's a video on this stove. It has the ability to splay open pot support legs, nice and wide, to accommodate this kind of size of pot. We've got one leg to pull out there. There you have it. That is one option if you like that style of cooking. Always consider the fuel, it's not just the size of the stove. You can also do a ration pack boil up meal in the rectangular mess tin if you don't want the jet boil, but you do want to use a gas power burner. You can also use this for a dehydrated meal, although it's a bit big for that. In this space here you could have other sundries such as your cooking oil, utensils, cleaning cloths. Fill that little void, don't waste space. I'm using a cat stove for this, and obviously a pan of your choice. Fuel into here, light it up and put our pan on. This is the simmer ring and snuffer. I always like to put a candle in mine. Often it's dark when I get to camp. It just helps set all this up rather than set up in the dark. And a very small windshield. Bagged all that up. When I'm ready to cook, the pot would go on. Now the pot itself is just a little aluminium pot again. I could do an MRE in there. I could do some home cooking. I could have put the alloy pot grip in, but this will do. Pick up the hot pot like that. I used to have one of them little grippers to put on. So all this is an option. The cat stove, liquid fuel, and a pot to put it in, and it shouldn't be any bigger than that. Again, there's a lot you can do with that. I quite like this because I do have a lot of MREs, but this would also be handy for dehydrated cooking, where all you're doing is bringing water to the boil. New little pack I found on the car boot. It's a fast response pack. Again, shoulder sling. Nice little pack this, I like this. In here is going to be for my dehydrated meals. So I would use a pot system like this, and inside would either fit my cat stove or a tiny gas cylinder, which I think is the way I'm going to go with this particular one. So not present is the actual stove for it. This is the cat stove we saw before, which does fit inside this pot, but I do have plans to put a different stove system with this. We're nearly there with this, not quite, but a simple cat stove like this fits in. Again, consider the fuel. If I was to use the cat stove like this inside here, which would make it a really small compact system, that will only do me 2 little boils, and that's when it's full. I would need to bring the extra fuel, and I'm sure I brought some with me. There's the fuel I would need to consider for a longer trip. It's a Trangia safety fuel bottle, and I think to fill it is something like 460 ml. Imagine the cat stove in here and I'm on a longer trip. This is realistically the size of fuel I would need, and it would be carried on the outside of the pack, hence it having some cord on here and a beaner. I don't want to contaminate the pack with the smell of the fuel. But that is another option. This is going to have a power gas burner with it eventually, and we'll do a video on that. This would be a compact system, and that is small, but the fuel for it is not. The fuel, it is a big consideration. How long are you going for? How much do I need? How much room will it take up? Although the stoves, like I said before, are very small, like that, will fit in a little cup. That isn't going to last. That would do about 1 burn, and like I said, consider the fuel. Something a little larger this time. Again, it has a shoulder sling, great on the day out, especially in the winter. It's the petrol stove and an army tin, mess tin, and I've also included here on the lid a big windshield. Really cut down on wasting fuel with a good windshield, believe me. So in the lid, I'll just pop my spoon in. Windshield. Let's have a look what we have in here. Not the lightest. The petrol stove. This is quite a nice stove, 30 quid. Petrol. Great in the winter, fold out legs. I've put a quiet dampener on, which runs really nice. Handy dandy little stove, and I need a handy dandy cook pot. Now in this cook pot I can also include all my meals inside that, a way of transportation. And obviously the GSR field bag also, and just inside I have a little multi-tool to fix the stove, and should it be required I can just pop the flame spreader back on. I can accommodate the MREs in here and the pot itself. Now I have a similar German one, but the handle didn't want to stay in its upright position like this, and the handle would fall into the flame and I'd pick the damn thing up and have 3rd degree burns. But by lifting up on the mechanism on the side, the handle will stand on its own. You're not going to have a problem firing this up below 0. Great for MREs. Just one more now. Let's look at something like this. This is the H2O pouch, similar to a Condor, but this has my water in, but has the ability to be able to cook also. Open the top. I have a lid for a cook pot. 1 litre Nalgene full of water, and in the bottom of that I have the GSI glacier pot. A good option again for dehydrated foods. Pop your water in, dehydrated foods, bring it to a boil, stand it. There is a cozy for this, by the way, but different episode. And the pouch to put it in, the water to cook with, and in this section here is a great size for my hexie. So I do have a stove with enough fuel for about 8 burns. Everything I've tried to put on the shoulder sling also. The lid, throw that away. The lid I just put into there. So there's really an option there for different types of cook systems. Not so much we're looking at the stoves or the pots or anything, but just the methods to use to cook food. This would be great for dehydrated meals because it also includes the water. I can put a lot of these over onto a shoulder sling. This one is the only one that houses water. So as I pack away, we'll go through them. GSR field bag will house my German Army mess tin and BRS 12 petrol stove. It's probably the biggest, suitable for winter, also can be transported on a shoulder sling. The fast response pack for dehydrated foods. This will not require the liquid fuel, but I haven't completed the build of this, and it does house the food. The actual cooking bit is quite small. It's quite small. I just need a burner for this, and it's in the post as we speak. This is, I think, going to be one of my favourites once it's completed. It has a section on the front here which houses my hot and cold drinks. I've had a day out with this. I quite like it. I can't remember what stove I used. Do I use this or I just need to get a cup out of the jet boil. So let's make a start. When you look at other people's systems, let's get this grass. When you look at other people's systems, they always start with the stove and say, look at my stove, isn't it small? Until you realise you've got to add the fuel, and like I said, realistically you need a fuel bottle, big one, 460ml. Will take me, what, 2 days winter, 3 days summer. So although this looks a ridiculously small system, you really do have to take into account all the other factors. and wick some fuel into it. There you have it. Just as the bubbles are starting, I like to add my coffee. Obviously make your own coffee to your own recipe. Stir that in. And I'll be ready for the simmering in a minute. You've got to first consider what kind of meals that you're cooking. Are they wet meals, MREs? Is it dehydrated foods? Or are you bringing your own food with you? Potatoes, steaks, things like that. You're going to need a pot on a decent burner. Are you MREs, boil in a bag? You can get away with something a lot more condensed, a lot more compact. Are you the type of person who likes dehydrated foods? You only need to bring water together, bring it to a boil. You can get away with something really quite compact, such as that GSI setup that I'm in the process of doing my coffee now. So you've got to decide what school you're in when it comes to the type of foods you're cooking, then accommodate your cook system to that. Now I can start to steep my coffee. Now I think all of these are contenders for each of the types of cooking that we've just discussed there. So really it is all about finding your medium. And I've also found pouches for some of the sets as well. Quite a bugger for putting something down and it's gone, it's disappeared. So I do like to keep all my cook sets together.